Y'all, I'm gonna read this. I'm gonna read this quote. I'm gonna read a couple of quotes. Okay. Let's get into it. Cyril kept his eyes on the road. Even though he didn't really know his children, he loved them all the same. Each got 20% of the love he had to offer. No more, no less.
Oh, man. You're just ruining it. Look at my lips. You're ruining it. Ruining.
Come on, Cyril. Come on. You're not helping black men beat the allegations. What's up with you? What's up? Let me go back. Day 1 of me beating the Hotep allegations. Let's get into it. So first things first, we have the book People Person by Candice Carty-Williams. I am so sorry. Like I said, she is a popular black author. Well, I'll before I get into it, I've read one of her books, Queenie, which I really thoroughly enjoyed. Talked about topics of feminism, growing up in an immigrant household, just, lack of culture, kind of not really understanding who you are because of where you are and where you grew up. So I'm really excited to read this book. And we're going to start off with Cyril Pennington. Cyril is a Rolling Stone himself. He has 5 children by 4 different mothers. And I think, more than anything, Nick Cannon vibes. I think more than anything, the biggest issue with him having 4 children or 5 children with 4 different women is that he doesn't make the time or effort to be present in any of their lives. Not one. And we'll get into that. So Cyril is a man who I assume is, middle-aged, and he's a bus driver living in the ends in London, right? I believe this takes place in London. Like I said, 5 kids by 4 different women. And let's just hop right into it. So the first kid he has is Nikisha, the oldest daughter of his, who at the time of the first chapter is 19. And second in line is Dimple? No. It's Dimple or Danny. He had a son by, I will say, Nikisha. Her mother is Bernice, who's Jamaican. Danny's mother is white. He has a third daughter named Dimple, who is like Indian Jamaican. And then he has a 4th child whose name is Elizabeth, otherwise known as Lizzie, who is from a Nigerian woman. And then his last child is from Nikisha's mother, Bernice, again, and the last child's name is Prince. So Cyrus wakes up just carefree as can be, just vibing, just moving. I don't like how Candice Carty-Williams makes it a big point in this chapter to just talk about how, he's a deadbeat dad. No cap, no arguing, no nothing. But I just didn't like how she was going in about his apartment. Cyril basically can't afford to support himself nor his children. He asks them for money sometimes. Up to this point, some of them have never met him, ever met him. But he's not financially stable. Spends his money on gambling and alcohol and music. But she just makes a huge point to say he's living in a studio apartment. I just take it personal because I might be in that situation soon, and there's no shame in that. But Cyril just wakes up and has a grand idea to get all 5 of his children together. I don't know if it's just he realizes he hasn't been present in any of their lives and that they don't see him as a father figure. But I think it's more so the fact that he just wanted all of his offspring to know each other, to be friends. He starts making jokes about, I don't want y'all running into each other on the road and, trying to have kids or anything. And it's just a weird thing. But I will say this first chapter is just introducing all the characters. It's kind of introducing their father for who he is. He's a Jamaican man, and I think he has old school values. So he doesn't really believe in seasonal affective disorder, basically saying he sometimes has seasonal depression. His mood is completely controlled by the weather. Something he's really attached to is music, and that's really the only thing he spends his money on, is a vinyl record player. And as deadbeat as that is, it's kind of cool to see the way he just kind of he just moves off vibes. He just moves with the wind. He just wake up. He's just happy. All of his children are taking digs at him about him being a deadbeat father, and he's just like, haha, that's funny, huh? Yeah, life has a funny way of bringing us together. So that first chapter, he gets everyone together, brings them to an ice cream stand, and then he drops them off one by one after he realizes that they're not really vibing with each other. They're 5 kids from 4 different women. Some of them have different ethnicities, you know, some being Jamaican, Caribbean, some being African, some being like mixed between white and black, others being like Indian and Jamaican. Like everyone pretty much has their own identity, you know, different body types, different ages as well. So it doesn't really work out the way he wants it to. And I think something interesting that Carty-Williams is exploring in this first chapter is self-love. Like, one thing that she talked about was that Cyril needed no lesson in learning how to love himself. He didn't love anybody else, or I won't say he didn't love anybody else, but he didn't properly show affection, or he didn't properly love anyone else, but he properly loved himself. So, you know, that's one thing that's pretty interesting, because each of his kids have their own like things that they're working through. Like, I think Nikisha is a motherly figure. She's taking care of Cyril's last kid, Prince, who's like 9 at the time. She basically talked about how she couldn't go to uni. You know, she couldn't go to uni because she had to take care of Prince, and her class schedule didn't align with taking care of him. You have Dimple, who's plus size, and she's not really confident. You have Danny, who's, you know, I don't know what the other like kids, you know, self-doubts and everything are. But one thing that's really important in this first chapter is we see Nikisha, the oldest daughter, take a shot at Dimple for being overweight. And it comes a little bit from, I don't know if it's like the jealousy, but Cyril made an extra gesture to Dimple's mother that Cyril didn't really make for anyone else. And Nikisha notices it. She's smart, and she kind of calls out how like she didn't like that. And then even Cyril got really upset about the fact that Dimple is like, you know, somebody who deals with self-confidence issues, and that, you know, Nikisha as her sister shouldn't be attacking her. And then Nikisha just goes like, half. She's like, I'll have you remember that we're half siblings. And it's just a huge day of dysfunction. And Cyril comes home at the end of the day, grabs a beer, and just kind of wants to forget all about it. So the rest of the chapter is just him reflecting on the promises he's made, or he's going to make throughout the next couple of years, that he's all gonna get them together again. Or no, it's that he's gonna hang out with them separately. He's gonna be more of a father. As always, is lies. So that's the first introduction part. That's just, you know, chapter 1 vibes. Chapter 2 is about Dimple, and I think it's a really interesting choice to start off the novel. I would say, I know chapter 1 is starting off the novel, but I would say to start off the novel with Dimple. Like, I don't know anyone else, but I didn't see this coming. So there's a time skip. Dimple is 30. I believe she hasn't really had contact with the rest of the kids, but it doesn't really say. But this chapter explores Dimple breaking up with her boyfriend, Kyron. And Dimple has an interesting life. Like, she's an influencer. She's become more comfortable with who she is. A little bit, right? She seeks a lot of validation from the people on the internet. She just like me for real, because we both on the internet trying to get likes, trying to get views. For her, is really the comments and the emojis on her pictures that make her feel good. For me, who knows what I'm seeking. But Dimple pretty much posts all about her life. She vlogs to her community, and today is the day in which she finally made the vlog where she talked about breaking up with her boyfriend. For the next 2 days, he's blowing up her phone. He can't get to her. Like, basically, you know, she says it's over, and she says, I'm cutting him off cold turkey. And that's beautiful. You know, you love to see it, because at the end of the day, Kyron wasn't a good person to her and wasn't a good person for her, and he could be really mean at times. So she was really proud of herself for breaking up with him. And she kind of just decided to do what she does, which is just isolate herself. Her mom was gone for the weekend, and she just wanted to order a pizza, sleep, relax. She wakes up out of sleep, opens the door thinking that she's gonna grab the pizza and pay the man, and it's Kyron. And the first thing he does is push her, physical abuse starting off from from literally the first interaction with them, right? He pushes her, they start yelling, he starts being emotionally manipulative. It would be easier if you hadn't answered the phone. I wouldn't be this mad, I wouldn't be blowing up at you if you hadn't answered the phone. He wants her to unlock her phone and she refuses to. She's standing on her 2 feet as an adult, as a grown woman. He picks up the phone, throws it across the room, slams it against the wall. Phone is broken. Just so much emotional abuse, in addition to the physical abuse. Somehow, some way, after all that happens, he sort of calms down and he says, see, this is how much I love you, and relationships are complicated, and I wouldn't act this way if I didn't love you, unless I wouldn't act this way if I didn't love you, and me acting this way is a sign of loving you. Somehow, some way, she lets her guard down for a second. They have, they get intimate. Next thing you know, she's putting on her clothes, he's putting on his clothes, and then he goes you see, I knew we wouldn't break up. And then she bursts his bubble saying, we did break up, we did. That still happened, but we're still broken up. And then he just gets back to crazy. Carty-Williams writes him as a demon, and it kind of seems that way. If not a demon, at least, what are those little things called? A gremlin. He's a gremlin because he'll act so sweet in one way, and then he'll just turn into the abusive person the next way. So the next second. But basically, that's what happens, right? She says we did break up still. That still happened, and we broke up. And then we start seeing Kyron get crazy when she says that they're still broken up, and he starts getting physically abusive. Now he's choking her, literally trying to choke the life out of her. And she has to reach out and scratch him on the face to get him to stop. Then he starts, I don't even know what, long story short, they have a short conversation, at least, of him trying to choke her again. But this time she's understanding of what's going on and how he's literally trying to kill her. She takes a step back. He slips on a piece on a oil spill that happened earlier in the chapter, busts his head open, and at this point in time he's laying unconscious, not breathing. No one's there except Dimple. She's going back and forth on whether to call the cops, but growing up as she has, she just understands that the cops are no good in those situations, and she decides to call Nikisha. Now that's kind of a crazy twist, because I'm I didn't even think they kept in contact. I didn't even think they liked each other. Part of what was going on in the earlier chapters with Nikisha really taking that dig at Dimple's weight was kind of her own insecurity of the fact that I'm pretty sure people of different ethnicities can obviously be treated different. You have somebody who especially when it comes to men, especially when it comes to black men, you can have white women getting treated one way, Indian women getting treated one way, black women getting treated another way. And I think Nikisha recognized that with Cyril in his interactions. He recognized that with the interaction between Cyril and Dimple's mother. So she recognized that she recognized that in the interaction between Cyril and Dimple's mother versus between Cyril and Bernice. And she understands that there's a certain level of privilege that Dimple's mother got, being an Indian woman or a Jamaican Indian woman, and the featureism, the colorism, as opposed to the other people being black women. And I will say, it's interesting. I know it's something that Carti's gonna explore later in the chapter, because she writes about this Nigerian woman who definitely is showing I don't know if it's xenophobia. I think it is. She called Carti hints at the fact that Lizzie's mother, who's Nigerian, would not like the fact that Lizzie is hanging out with what the book calls Jamaican litter. So there's already that divide between yeah, there's already that divide. I would just say that there's already that divide, like nationality wise, ethnicity wise, body type wise. But long story short, Dimple calls Nikisha. That's where the chapter ends. I'm really interested to see where this book goes. Unfortunately, we're gonna end on a cliffhanger, but we're gonna get to part 2, chapter 3. Really, we're gonna get to chapter 3. We're going to explore more and more of the journey in this book, and I can't wait to tell y'all more about this.